Hi, I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. Welcome to Asian American Life. We're at the Newark Museum in New Jersey, where they're showcasing an extensive collection of rare Islamic art. In Wondrous Worlds, Art and Islam Through Time and Place. Let's take a closer look. From the Middle East and Africa to Southeast Asia and the Americas, this exhibit spans 1,400 years of history. Each section reflects the history and religion of Muslims and how their culture and customs defines their everyday lives. To learn more about this exhibit, you could like our Facebook page at Asian American Life. Now let's take a look at what's coming up on our show. Ni hao. Why is this common Mandarin Chinese greeting being taught around the world? Paul Lin explains. Life after prison, Tinabeth Pina tells the untold stories of Asian American ex-cons. Exploited workers, Minnie Roh's exclusive report on human trafficking within the Asian American community.
I'm Paul Lin. China accounts for roughly a fifth of the world's population. No wonder more people than ever are trying to learn Mandarin. Whether children or business people, learning the language is one way to keep pace with what's currently the world's second largest economy after the U.S.
It looks like a typical morning at any preschool, but at Mandarin Seeds it starts with kids taking off their shoes. It's just one of the cultural things they learn by going to a Chinese immersion program.
Why do you have to take off your shoes? Well, it's a very Chinese thing. I mean, in every Chinese home we take off our shoes and children know that's normal. Like it's part of our culture.
实在哪里呀？在下面就好了。
Having children pick up the language with the culture is really how Sarah believes Chinese is best learned. Yes, it's a class in Mandarin, but it's also a preschool with language as a tool. So toddlers learn customs and songs as well as useful phrases to make Mandarin a part of their daily lives.
Even at home, they probably just point to the water. So when they do, instead of saying water, you say 水, and they'll understand eventually. If I say 水, teacher will give me water. And if I say 脏, dirty, and then the teacher will know.
I believe that it's really important to speak another language or maybe even 3 languages in today's world. It's increasingly global.
Children are much less likely to be resistant to picking up new languages if you just kind of encourage them to be exposed to the environments from an early age.
The developmental stakes for kids are high. Studies show that starting a second language early provides significant cognitive benefits as well as academic gains in other subjects.
In those high-stakes tests that states give, we see students who have had language early on scoring higher on their mathematics achievement as well as their English language arts.
Across the U.S., some 200,000 students now study Mandarin. More than 200 schools offer full-time immersion classes for K through 12. That's half the states in the U.S., including Georgia, Texas, Minnesota, and Utah, and the District of Columbia with immersive Mandarin programs. President Obama is looking for even more growth in Mandarin programs. During the Chinese president's visit last fall, he called for 1 million American students to be learning Mandarin in the next 4 years.
After all, if our countries are going to do more together around the world than speaking each other's language, truly understanding each other is a good place to start.
It will take more than a presidential directive to reach the goal of 1 million U.S. students studying Mandarin.
We are estimating that we're going to need approximately 5,000 newly certified teachers to teach in the public schools across the country.
So how does a language other than English become a must-learn language at school? It helps if it's one of 6 official UN languages, or sometimes it takes a historic event or economic challenge to the U.S., like the escalating Soviet-U.S. space race in the late 50s. Learning Russian was seen as a way to keep up. By the 80s, learning Japanese was seen as necessary due to Japan's rising economy. At Wall Street Chinese, business students seek to put their understanding of Mandarin and Chinese culture to work as soon as possible. Some have had no previous exposure to the language. Others have much more experience.
As time goes on and more businesses continue to seek being in China and Chinese businesses seek to be in the United States, and we continue, the relationship economically and culturally, I think I can only go up from here.
Maybe they have some special project, they need help. Maybe they have a very special interview. they need to do. Maybe they just want, what they do is relating to China. Maybe they're in manufacturing business, and then maybe they're architects, maybe they're movie star, maybe they're like directors.
Lee Davis is a software developer who's been learning Chinese for about 7 years. Beijing may be where he's headed to do business and become completely fluent in Mandarin.
I think in order to attain fluency level, I just need to actually live in China and work there every day and just speak it every day.
It's a matter of, practicing, in order to talk. Same thing. I learned many years English in China, but then only I came here, I can start to do conversation.
Back at Mandarin Seeds, parents are embracing the language and culture, like Amy Chong, who grew up speaking Cantonese. She's been reviewing her college Mandarin to reinforce what her kids are learning in preschool.
I think I was very self-conscious about speaking it, and that's kind of why I sort of lost it with time. And it was honestly only as I grew older and I moved to San Francisco and I had children, and I was, I thought to myself, you know what, this is going to happen. Like, I need to set a good example for my kids if I expect them to learn a second language.
We care so much about the culture itself. We celebrate what's important, why we do it. It's not just the language. You need to know also certain customs.
So learning language and customs helps ground students' learning of Mandarin to help them retain a language that takes years to learn.
Given the challenges many new students face learning Mandarin, it remains to be seen how many students will stick with it long enough to benefit from the language. But without a doubt, learning Chinese will help to boost understanding in the culture and ease interactions with the most populous country in the world. I'm Paul Lin for Asian American Life.
I'm Tinabeth Pina. Contrary to popular belief, Asian Americans are not your stereotypical model minority. In fact, their incarceration rates are on the rise. And just like any other inmate that gets paroled, their transition into society can be an uphill battle, maybe more so.
If you don't know who I am by now, then it's about that time you ask somebody about me.
When I was in prison, I was like, well, what am I gonna do with myself? Am I gonna just sit here and play games, and just waste my time doing that? Or am I going to, use this time to start setting up for my release? Am I gonna read books? Am I gonna just educate myself and just do whatever I can do to come out a different person?
China Mac knows the prison system well. He spent 10 years behind bars for attempted murder and did time before that for gang-related crimes.
If I would have never went to prison, I don't think it would be to this level. I don't know what would have happened, But at the same time, I also went through a lot in prison. I caused a lot of people heartaches and a lot of people, pain and suffering. I caused myself a lot of pain and suffering. And, whatever happens in prison, when you get in trouble, right, you see who's there. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you're dying, right? It's kind of like but you're not dead. You're not physically dead, but you're away. You're away, and then you get to see what's really important.
What's the Asian population like in prison?
When I was in Sing Sing, there was maybe 7, 8 of us, which was a lot for me. But then the prison might be so big, so we might not be together. Right. I might be here, and that person might be all the way over there.
Do you think prison worked for you?
I think so. I mean, it worked for me because I don't never want to go back to prison. And I worked on not going back to prison.
In the 2 years he's been on parole, China Mac has become an established hip-hop artist. And according to him, he put together a combination of personal savings and private investors, bought a recording studio, and created a record label, an outcome that is far from ordinary for former felons. Unfortunately, a few months after this interview, China Mac violated his parole and was back in jail.
Punitive practices, particularly the way the criminal justice system is set up, has to address long-term issues, right? And not just we're going to jail you and you get released and you're supposed to be changed and all that stuff. When folks come out, there's no home to go to. There are very few grassroots organizations and API community in general. Yeah, a lot of people fall right back into the system.
According to the AAPI Beyond Bars Committee, over 70% of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are arrested for new crimes within 3 years of being out of prison. Those recidivism rates are based on the estimated 9% of AAPIs in state and federal prisons. Although these numbers are low compared to other ethnicities, they are only approximations, since Asians are officially categorized as others throughout much of the U.S. prison system.
In mass incarceration or the criminal justice system, our numbers are lumped, right? So, like, for example, we're categorized as others, not as Asian, or even disaggregate even further, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Hmong, Laos, Chinese, and all that stuff. So what happens is our experience is lost in that data because the data doesn't show that we have increased. I think since 1997, particularly API juvenile arrest or incarceration has increased over 200%. So what we're looking at is the demystifying of the model minority myth.
California-based artist Jennifer Moon debunked the myth when she was given an 18-month prison sentence in 2008 for attempted robbery.
Guards and inmates would say, like, what are you in prison for? You don't look like you should be here. Or like, I know I'm not supposed to ask this, but like, what are you here for? And then I would, say attempted robbery, and people would be very shocked.
But the model minority myth wasn't the only stereotype Moon encountered behind bars.
A lot of people would call me Chinese lady. They'd be like, hey, Chinese lady. And I'd be like, well, I'm not Chinese. Mm-hmm. Or they would say things like, oh, you look like Yoko Ono. So there is certainly, maybe a lack of exposure to Asian culture in prison. And so I played up this kind of revolutionary identity, which probably changed people's perceptions of what an Asian woman is or supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer's revolutionary stance is also seen in her artwork.
Possibly me being an Asian woman and having gone to prison, it becomes sort of like a novelty. And it also makes an interesting narrative. So then I was able to use that in my work.
I am reacting to my feelings of not being enough, which then drive me to continually prove my worth and what I believe is right.
Would you say you're grateful for that experience?
I am grateful for it, yes. For me to learn a certain love of self and others, and also understanding a freedom that's not defined by confinement, like physical confinement, was a huge gift.
As the Asian American population continues to grow, so has the total number of Asian Americans living in poverty. According to the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, 12.6% of Asian Americans live below the poverty line, and some of those lower income individuals find themselves behind bars.
So my parents, they were immigrants from China and Malaysia. They came to America, and we were extremely poor growing up. I just ended up with the wrong crowd and ended up joining a gang. We started committing some crimes, and that's eventually what led me to getting a 12-year sentence.
Jason served time in Texas for aggravated robbery.
For you or for your mom, was there any shame involved?
In Chinese culture, we have something that's called 面子, right? And that's extremely important. What other people see you or you're standing in the community. When I was incarcerated, my father, he disowned me. A lot of people from church decided to distance themselves from us. My mom didn't feel like she could go to church anymore. And so coming out, I felt that I was covered in this, veil of shame, that everybody was going to look down on me, and that I would always be known for the worst thing that I'd ever done, and that there was no way to break that.
The stigma of being an ex-con can be difficult to overcome, but uniquely more so for Asian Americans. Fortunately, Jason broke through that and created a successful and unique gift delivery company. But he hasn't forgotten his prison roots.
I chose to make something different out of my situation. I didn't choose to accept that. I chose to spot opportunity and take advantage of opportunities. And so my whole purpose now, I feel, is to give back and serve others. Because when I was at my lowest point, it was the kindness of others that helped build me as a person, right? And so over the past 8 years, I go back to prisons and I really try to help motivate these kids to do something once they've gotten out.
From the stigmas experienced by former inmates and their families, to the number of Asian Americans behind bars and the stereotypes they encounter while locked up, the model minority myth for Asian Americans is just that, a myth.
I guess that idea of honor and shame from like the old generation perspective is starting to be lost in the new generation. Going back to prisons, it's starting to really surprise me how many more Asians I'm starting to see when I go back to facilities. Instead, it's the mindset's starting to definitely shift.
According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the total number of people locked up in the U.S. is currently over 2 million. Part of that number includes people facing immigration and deportation, many of them Southeast Asian Americans. For Asian American Life, I'm Tinabeth Pina.
I'm Minnie Roh. Immigration issues are always a hot-button topic during any election year. The 2016 presidential campaign is no exception. But what is not being debated is the fact that a portion of undocumented workers, particularly Asians, are highly susceptible to human trafficking and exploitation. Many times, their offenders are none other than those in the Asian American community.
I have a dream also to my kids, because I'm thinking this is a good opportunity for my family.
When I heard that I can come to United States, it made me feel interesting.
They came to your university,
Yeah.
and they said what?
They said, if you want to go around the world, you can join us.
They came to the United States filled with hope that the land of opportunity would positively impact their lives.
Were you very excited about coming here?
Yes.
Yeah.
These 3 students were attending college in Thailand when they say an internationally based Korean religious group recruited them as volunteers to help the needy in New York City in exchange for visas, room, board, and English lessons.
What did they say you were going to be doing?
To help poor people, to build a house.
They asked to remain anonymous as they are currently embroiled in a pending criminal investigation into the organization.
When we first got here, they have the staff came to pick up us at the airport.
From there, they say things went downhill fast.
And they collect passport, money, and telephone, and the ID card that can identify myself, and they keep it.
Their daily routine from day one bore no resemblance to the promises they had heard back home.
When I was in Thailand, they say they're gonna teach us English many hours, something like that. Yeah, but just 1 hour. After that, we go out to pass out the flyer.
Almost every day that we have to go outside, sometimes 50 blocks for a day.
Passing out religious flyers on the street and walking for miles, soliciting donations door to door. Sleeping on a church floor, 50 people to a room, and just 2 bathrooms to share. When the students protested, they were punished.
Sometimes if we don't do what they told me, they tell that not to give us food.
The leader, he's so mad, and he took the photo. He almost hit on me, and he kept yelling to me almost every day.
Human trafficking is the exploitation of labor through force, fraud, or coercion.
Song Kim is a lawyer with the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, or ALDEF for short.
Now they're here on these visas that are heavily just dependent on the employers to take advantage of the situation. And they end up in situations that they absolutely did not sign up for and would never have come for had they known the reality of the situation.
everybody's freaked out.
This woman is also Kim's client. She says she paid a recruiter in the Philippines $4,000 to work at an agency that provided hotel housekeeping services and came here legally on an H-2B working visa. It seemed like a great deal, a 3-year contract during which she would repay her debt. Every 9 months, she could visit her family in the Philippines and then a rotation at another hotel. Her first stint was at a 5-star luxury hotel in Arizona. She says immediately the mental abuse began.
Our supervisor telling us if you have to finish until 3 o'clock, and then they just only threatening us that if you're not gonna finish and you are not good, clean at the hotel or the rooms, we need to send back to you at the Philippines.
She had no choice but to stick it out because of the money she owed the recruiters back home. And then the unthinkable happened.
Only 2 months we working, the management called us general meeting, and they said, the management said it's recession, no money's coming in, so we need to send back to you in the Philippines.
Going back home was not an option because of the crushing debt she now had no way of repaying. And because her visa was tied to her employer, overnight she became an undocumented worker.
There are lots of cases that we see that has to do with unscrupulous recruiting agencies who recruit under false pretenses and lure them to work in the United States.
When people hear the term human trafficking, it is almost always equated with the sex industry. But the problem is far more prevalent, ranging from trafficking of domestic workers such as maids or nannies to construction, garment, and agricultural workers. Even teachers are not exempt.
There was kind of a big case several years ago where a recruiter in the Philippines recruited Filipino teachers to come and work in a school, and they charged lots and lots of money for the opportunity for them to come to the U.S. to work. And it turned out that the things that were promised to them, were lies. They paid all of that money to come here, and it turned out that there weren't even jobs for them.
A study conducted by the Freedom Network, a national coalition of anti-trafficking organizations, shows that 55% of trafficked people are from Asian countries, particularly the Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia. And because of the cultural and language barriers, much of the trafficking is perpetrated by other Asians.
The root cause of trafficking and the reason that trafficking happens is because of things like poverty and things like discrimination and things like gender-based violence. It's not something that happens in a vacuum, right? And it's not something that happens to just a certain type of person. So I think it's really important to do work around addressing those root causes. That requires collaboration across, different service providers in different countries, because it's a global kind of problem that, doesn't have any borders.
And Kim says in many cases, the person has no idea that they are being trafficked and counsels people to watch out for the red flags.
You are working very, very long hours with no or very little breaks. If you don't have control over your own identity documents, if you are isolated, if you're socially isolated, if you're physically isolated, if you're prevented from talking to certain people, if you are prevented from coming and going as you wish, if you're being paid very, very little, or if you're being paid not what you were promised.
The Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which was signed into law in 2000, offers even more assistance, such as T visas, which allow victims to live and work temporarily in the United States in exchange for reporting the crimes committed against them and cooperating in the investigation. And Kim says even if your case does not fall under the category of human trafficking, you are still protected under U.S. laws, including labor laws. However, many undocumented workers do not realize they have this right to protection, which leads to further abuse.
Even if you're undocumented, you are still entitled to minimum wage and overtime. So you are still protected under those laws. You're protected under the criminal laws. But they don't know that necessarily, right? Because people who are taking advantage of them are saying, you're going to be deported, you're going to be arrested if you leave the situation. So you have to stay and do as I say.
After her hotel job disappeared, our Filipino worker made her way to California to look for work. But without papers or driver's license, jobs were scarce. She bounced around until she came to New York City, where she now works as a nanny. It's been 8 years since she's seen her husband and children, who were just 10 and 5 when she left to pursue the job to provide a better life for them. Her parents and sister died back home in the Philippines, and she could not go to their funerals.
I'm stuck in here because I cannot go home because I'm thinking our money that we borrow it. And my sister died also. I cannot go home, so it's really hard. It's really hard.
As for the students, after enduring 2 months of virtual slave labor, they finally had enough and fled as a group. Pursued by their captors, they sought refuge at a Thai temple and eventually found their way to Aldef. They say they are afraid to return back to Thailand for fear of retribution and are slowly rebuilding their lives here following their ordeal.
I don't want other people to be like me, to be what I got treated.
If you or someone you know is a victim of human trafficking, there is a special type of immigration relief which allows you a 4-year non-immigrant status with a pathway to citizenship, during which time you're eligible for food stamps, health care, and housing support. I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life.
That's our show for now. Be sure to stop by Wondrous Worlds at the Newark Museum in New Jersey. You could also get more information on our Facebook page at Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. We'll see you next time.